Check. Check. Ah, that ought to help. Hello, Janine. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Well, it is 8:30. It is Sunday morning. And I am Ron. So for those of you keeping score, that must mean that it is Sunday morning live with Ron. Here I am. Welcome. We do this every Sunday morning. I get on live. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. We are live on, here, let me get my Facebook going live again so I can see me. And we're live on Instagram. All three of those things. And Janine has joined us on Instagram. I don't see anybody on Facebook yet. And I can't see YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, I apologize. I cannot see your comments. So if you want to comment or ask a question, jump on Facebook or Instagram. So what is Sunday Morning Live with Ron? Well, we come out here into my backyard every Sunday morning. I even started back when it was cold and rainy, but now it's quite nice and sunny, as you can see. Unfortunately, I don't have sufficient lights to overcome this sun hitting me over here on this side of the face, but what you gonna do? We come out here every Sunday morning. I will show you the 5 new pieces that are going into my gallery this week. I will talk a little bit about how to improve your photography skills. Today we start into composition. We've already covered getting sharp pictures using a technique of holding your elbows in to hold the camera steady, or using a tripod to hold the camera steady, or propping it on some other steady surface to hold the camera steady. And then we've also covered the exposure triangle, and that was the last 3 weeks. So that's the first 3 episodes in May, 3, 10, 17, covered the exposure triangle. And today we're going to start into composition. And then I actually move away from the theory, and I'll grab my camera off of its tripod. It's a Sony a6000 mirrorless camera. That's what I use for my shooting. So I will grab him, and we will actually take a look at what composition means and how it actually affects your pictures. So we're going to move beyond theory and show some actual examples. Today's composition tip is going to be about the rule of thirds. Okay. Yeah, Janine, the sun is very, very bright. See, part of my problem is that I start setting this up about 2 hours ago, and it's really hard to judge where the sun is going to be at 8:30 because it's in a different place every single week. So we do have a lot of sun. Actually, for my opening shot, I originally had set up to be shooting over into the sunny corner of the garden, the backyard, but it was just too sunny. I was getting all kinds of lens flare. Here, let me show you what that looks like. Just because as much as, oops, that's the wrong knob. As much as photography is about composition and exposure and all of those things, photography is about light. Yeah, all things said and done, photography is about light. And you can see here, if I point it off in the direction of the sun, we have a lot of light flare. I'm creating an artificial hood with my hand. See my hand up there. Okay. So you can see it's a very pretty scene, but when the sun actually got up, it was flaring in there too much. so I had to go back here, pick a different subject. Photography is also learning about adjusting to the reality of where you are and what you're shooting. You can go out looking for a very, very specific shot, and if it's just not there, you're going to have to learn to shoot what's there. But we're not on photography tips yet. Today, we're starting into composition, but that's not what we're doing. First, we're going to show you the 5 new pieces that are going into, what part of Arizona, Janine? Janine's from Arizona. I'm going to show you the 5 new pieces that are going into my gallery this week. I lived in Phoenix for, 6 years, I guess. Janine, just outside of Phoenix, in Tempe. But it was many years ago, probably before you were born. 5 new images. Every week I add images to my gallery. Okay, and we're going to start with this week's images. Okay. This image is called Close Encounters of the Dragon Kind. Okay. This was taken at Santana Row in San Jose during the Lunar New Year celebration that they had there. And they had a really good Chinese dragon troupe. And most of the time, I visited Tucson a couple times. Janine's from Tucson. I visited Tucson a couple times. It's really pretty. I always mean to get down there for the gem fair, but I never quite make it. Hopefully next year, maybe. Because I love minerals and gems and rocks, and there's an amazing fair for those of you who don't know. Every February, it lasts for weeks. And they have gems, they have minerals, they have jewelry, they have all kinds of sparkly stuff. I'm kind of like a magpie like that. I like sparkly things. So this is Close Encounter of the Dragon Kind from the Lunar New Year Festival, Santana Row. This little guy over here, when I get too close to the edge, this little guy over here just could not resist. He was just down face to face with the dragons. He was having too much fun. So I managed to get a picture of him encountering all of the dragon heads. Close Encounter of the Dragon Kind. Our second one, we go back, and this is from the Aztec festival that I went to around the beginning of December of last year, again in San Jose. And we went there because they were going to have an exhibition of native dancing. And they did. It took a while, but they were late starting out. But when they did, there were probably 12 to 18 dancers, all done up in native regalia. This particular shot is called Waiting in the Wings, Aztec Dancer 1. If you see my earlier work, you know I have multiple Aztec Dancer photos in there. And this is Aztec Dancer 1. This young lady down here is about to take a big solo. And this young lady here is waiting for her chance to do her big solo. So this is Waiting in the Wings, Aztec Dancer 1. If you have any questions about any of the pieces as we go along, do feel free to ask. Our third piece today is Give In to the Glow. This is a Robert Louis Tiffany lamp in the permanent collection at the DeYoung Museum in the Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. You've heard me rave about DeYoung Museum. It's just an eclectic collection of Americana and decorative arts and primitive arts and modern collection, and they have special shows. It's just a lot of fun, and of course it's in Golden Gate Park, which is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place to be. If you get a chance and you're out here in San Francisco, let me know. I'll be glad to go to the DeYoung with you, and we'll take a bunch of great pictures. So, this particular lamp is in a glass case, and it took considerable work to make the glass case disappear and end up here with Give In to the Glow. Tiffany lamp at the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco. Yes, Janine, I live in the East Bay area of San Francisco, a town called Concord, which outside of having a big amphitheater doesn't have a good deal to recommend it. It's mostly a bedroom community, but I like it here. It's very much an old-fashioned suburb built in the 1950s. The house that I'm in, I believe, was built in 1954, which was the year before I was born. But it's a nice, quiet place, as you can hear from my backyard. Stays pretty quiet here. This next one is called All Bark and No Bite. I went with black and white on this. It is a detail of the bark of a redwood tree that is growing in my backyard here in Concord. As you may have seen when I twisted around to shoot into the sun there, I have these redwood trees growing in that back corner of my yard, and I actually walked out there one day and took some close-up shots. Redwood bark is very, very interesting stuff. It has a lot of contrast and texture, and when you play with it a little bit to give it a bit of an abstract finish, you can come up with something really interesting like this. This will be going in my abstract collection as well as my nature collection. And it's called All Bark and No Bite. Okay. So that's 4 of them. And then this 5th one, again, taken right here in my backyard. When things were much rainier than they were, even though I call it dew on the grass, that's actually raindrops. Northern California is pretty dry, not as dry as Arizona. We do get some dew, but we don't get big drops of dew like this. It's actually raindrops. But it's called Dew on the Grass because I was just out of clever names. I have a fire ring here in my backyard that a previous tenant was kind enough to leave for me. I've never built a fire in it. I don't trust myself. I live here by myself, so it's too easy when you're by yourself to not pay attention to the fire and let it get out of hand, so I just don't build fires there. But it's got some pretty rocks, and it's got some pretty clover and grass, and I was out there on one particular morning after it had been raining and managed to get this close-up shot of the grass that is doing its raindrop thing. It came out very well. I like the granite rock behind it sort of picking up that bokeh, B-O-K-E-H. When we talked about exposure, we talked about bokeh. So this turned out to be a very nice piece, and I call it Dew on the Grass. So those are my 5 pieces this week. Okay. Just to review quickly, we have Dew on the Grass. We have All Bark and No Bite. We have Give In to the Glow. We have Waiting in the Wings, Aztec Dancer 1. And Close Encounters of the Dragon Kind. Okay. So those are my 5 new pieces. Yeah, Janine, all of my collections you can see on my website. It's ronalcottphotography.com, and it's Alcott with an O, O-L-C-O-T-T. As you can see, if you're watching on Facebook, you're watching on Instagram, so you might have a harder time finding the name of the gallery. But if you go to my profile, you'll see it there, ronalcottphotography.com, and there's a link in the profile that will take you to the website and give you access to all of the pieces there. So do take a look. So that's the first part. Remember I said we're going to do 3 things. 1, we're going to look at 5 new pieces, and we did that. 2, we're going to do photography tips, and 3, we're going to show you how those photography tips actually work on my Sony a6000. So, on to number 2, photography tips. Today's photography tips involve composition. Now, composition is a complex subject. We start to get into less of the technical pieces and more of the artistic pieces. And this is an area where there are rules and guidelines to help you make more interesting compositions. And it's important to know those rules. But it's important also to know when you can ignore those rules. So the biggest rule that you'll hear everybody talk about, and if you look at a photography course, when they get to composition, this is the first rule that they always talk about, is called the rule of thirds. Now, what does the rule of thirds mean? Under the rule of thirds, you visually take your field of vision and you divide it up into thirds vertically. Let me get my hands here. Okay, that's the rough of it. Okay, you divide it into thirds vertically. So you draw vertical lines about equidistant. And then you divide it into thirds horizontally. Okay. And what you end up with is something that looks kind of like that. Okay. So either in your mind or many cameras, actually, it's hard to see here with all the busyness, but my camera, when I go to shoot a picture, okay, you see that it actually puts in my thirds lines for me. I hope you can see that. I can see it. All right. Those thirds lines are important for a reason. Okay? Something about the human brain always finds things that are at these intersection points most pleasing to the eye. Our eye will focus on a subject that lands right on these points. Now, I don't know if you've seen the show before or not, but I am never sitting in the middle of the screen. I always set myself up so that I am off to one of these thirds lines. And generally speaking, my eyes are going to be right on that intersection. Where is it? That intersection right there. Okay? Hard to do sometimes with the sun shining the way it does. Why is that? That's because I want you looking at my eyes. When I am on screen, that's the place where you're going to connect with me, because that is where your brain will shift your focus. I've talked about focus before a little bit. The human brain has an incredible capacity to adjust all of the information that it sees coming in, okay? I can actually see my hands all the way out here, okay? So that information is reaching my eyeballs, okay? But if I'm not looking for that information, I don't actually see it. My brain filters it out, okay? So all the way here, I can see those hands there, all right? But the human brain likes to have something to focus attention on. And because I am at that intersection point, right here, of those third lines, my brain, and your brain hopefully, is going to focus on my face, right here. I don't even know where my face is. I keep trying to, rather than adjusting my fingers, looking at my fingers, I keep trying to do it looking at the screen. It screws me up. Okay? So, that's the idea of the rule of thirds. Okay? There's a corollary to that. It says not only are the intersection points interesting, but you can make an interesting composition by using, here, let's go back over here so you can see what I'm pointing out, by using, hi Terry. I see Terry has joined us, Terry Haley, who's one of my fellow artists on Art Storefronts, as is Janine. A whole bunch of artists here today. This holds true, these rules of thirds hold true for all types of visual arts. So whether you're doing painting, whether you're staging a play, whether you're doing photography, whether you're taking a picture of kids in the front yard, any type of visual arts, if you're taking video, if you're taking gardening photos, any type of visual arts, these rule of thirds will make you more interesting photos, okay? And you can use these zones, okay? So you can have the ground in the bottom third and the sky in the 2/3, or the ground take up the bottom 2/3 and the sky take up 1/3, or your subject take up the right third or the right 2/3 with something that is not as interesting taking up the left, okay? So you can use each of these zones. What doesn't often work is to put a single subject into a single square, okay? So you don't want to put your subject right here, okay? That's not going to be as interesting as putting your subject right here. And when we get to the practical demonstration part, I'll show you what I mean by that. But you can use these 9 zones, okay? The one thing that people do all the time is they take their subject and they center it right here. Okay? And most of the time, that is not very interesting. We'll talk a little bit later about when to break this rule, okay? What are the conditions when you don't want to use rule of thirds? But generally, as you go out and look this next week, think about the rule of thirds. Think about putting your subject right on one of these intersection points, or taking an area and putting it right through one of these zones. Okay? Now I'm going to jump back to my images for this week and sort of point out where the rule of thirds comes into the images. Okay? All right. Here we have zone, because we don't have a single subject. We've got this whole row of dragon heads. Okay? But these dragon heads all take up the full width of the bottom 2/3 of the picture. Okay? It would not be as interesting if they went straight across the center. Trust me, I'll show you later. Okay? Here, once again, she is standing right on that third, and these beautiful feathers fall right on that third. Okay? That's rule of thirds on this one. This is a place where, again, this is give into the glow. This is a place where it is right to break the rule of thirds. Why is that? Because this is what is known as a hero shot. Okay? The subject is one thing and one thing only. There's nothing else in the picture except this lamp. So the lamp is centered right in the picture. So a hero shot, okay, where your subject is large and the only thing in the picture, then you can ignore the rule of thirds. That's one of the conditions where you can ignore it. Okay. Here, I've got this interesting shadow down this line. Okay. And notice how just naturally the light kind of breaks. So this section down here is a little bit different than this section up here. And that just kind of came out. That's not something I did in post-production. But you see how horizontally we've got thirds. Okay, we got this guy running down that third line. Okay, this guy doesn't quite come all the way across to the 2/3. Okay, but so it's close. It's not scientific, but it's close. Okay, and then finally we look at dew on the grass. Okay. Even though the subject, the piece that's in focus, is actually this little piece of clover right here in the corner. Okay. When you blow this up, that's the piece that is in sharp focus. And you'll notice that he is right on the intersection of 2/3 lines. Okay. This one here and this one here. And then this horizontal grass also falls on a third line. The grass takes up the bottom third. The grass takes up the left third. This rock takes up the top 2/3, both top and right. That's what makes this such an interesting picture to look at. Okay? So, to recap, the rule of thirds is putting your subject, and believe me, if your subject is a person or an animal, the subject is the eyes. Okay? Human beings connect to eyes. We believe we can judge the intent of a person by looking at their eyes, and we believe the same thing about animals. Okay? So that is where our focus goes to automatically. Okay? So here's an example. This is not my photo. Okay? This is from that same lesson. But you notice how they've got the intersection line right on the eye of that honeybee. Okay? So you can put things in zones, and as I showed with dew on the grass, if you can fill multiple zones, okay? Don't just put a single object in a zone. Fill up a zone, okay? Fill up a zone if you're using zone, or put a point of interest right at the intersection. That is what we mean when we say the rule of thirds. Divide it into equal thirds, put things on the intersections, or fill the zones to make more interesting photography. All right? Rule of thirds. Here I am, back on my third, back on my 2/3, with my face right smack dab in the middle of that intersection. So, that's our photography tip for the day. So, we've covered 2 subjects so far. We looked at our 5 pictures. Notice how I snuck in a way to look at our 5 pictures twice. My pictures, as always, you can see more of them on ronolcottphotography.com. That's Olcott with an O, O-L-C-O-T-T. And you can see them there, and they are organized in galleries. And if you pull down the menu, not only are they organized in galleries by topic, they are also organized in galleries by location. Okay? So all of our pictures today are going to be in and around Northern California. There also is a gallery for new images, so they'll all be in new images gallery probably tomorrow morning. Who knows when I will get to them today. But definitely tomorrow morning they will be there because tomorrow morning I have to feature one of them on my daily Facebook posts. So you'll see that there. I wonder why nobody's joining on Facebook today. Interesting. Well, too bad they lose. So we covered the photos, and we've talked about the rule of thirds and how if you intersect things, okay, horizontal third lines, there we are, and vertical and horizontal, okay, that's about a third there, okay. You get more interesting pictures if you put things at the intersection, and if you put things to fill the full zones, okay? You can see over here, that redwood tree that we've talked about before is filling this zone over my left shoulder, okay? You notice how the fence, okay, lines up at about, as I said, it's very hard to do with my camera, with my live feed camera, just because I don't have that on a tripod. Okay, all I have is the hinge of my notepad, of my laptop, to get that lined up right. And when the lighting is not right, it's difficult to see. And if you were here a half hour ago, you see that now the lighting on me has completely changed. I no longer have that marvelous halo shining through my angel hair. So adjust to what's going on. But we talked about the rule of thirds. We talked about our photography tip of the week, which is our rule of thirds. Drew a blank there for a second. Sorry about that. It is still Sunday morning here in Northern California, so forgive me. It's 9 o'clock. I've only had 2 cups of coffee. So who knows what the world's going to look like in another 2 hours. But we won't be here that long. I'm only going to be here for about another 20 minutes, which gives me just time to grab my camera off of my tripod here and show you how the rule of thirds works in practical purposes when taking pictures. Okay, so bear with me 1 second while I grab my camera. And normally I'm able to do this without dropping it on the ground. And today we've got a fairly level setup with my tripod, so I should be able to do that. Okay, good. I managed to take it off without breaking anything. Now, I've got, oh, why did you go to sleep? Turn him back on. Did we kill that battery? Tell me I didn't kill the battery. There he is. Nope, I did kill that battery. Bear with me just another second. We're going to take you back here because I have to swap out the battery. I had an 81% battery when I went into this. And I've used it all up. Taking pictures is not that bad, but when I use it for live streaming, I have to have 100% battery. So, and of course, as I usually do if I don't put my lens cap back on, I just stuck my thumb right in the middle of the lens. Let me get that off of there for you. Okay, photographer's tip. Here you go. You want a little insider tip? I'll give you an insider tip. If you've got your camera, you want one of these. This is a lint-free lens cleaning cloth. Even if your camera is your phone, you want to do that often. Okay, you can use it right there on the lens on the back. Okay, it's my iPhone 8. Oh look, there's another one of my pictures right there as a phone case. I wonder where I got that. I'm sorry, I'm feeling particularly commercial today. So always, if you have your camera, be sure you're carrying a lens cloth. Okay. It will save you over and over and over again. You can fix a lot in post-production, but you can't fix everything. So now, if I turn this on and click here, okay, and go here, there. Now we're back live on the A6000. All right, Terry, thanks for joining us from Ohio. Hopefully we'll see you next week. Thanks for dropping in. Okay, here we go. Our subject today is going to be Mr. Rabbit, and you'll have to bear with me because I am juggling things with one hand, okay? And I can only see things on the monitor when I'm feeding things into the monitor. Okay? Now notice, I could set Mr. Rabbit up, okay? I could do a hero shot. I could put Mr. Rabbit right smack dab, put his eye right smack dab in the middle there and take that shot, okay? So we'll start from there. That's one of the things that a lot of people would do, all right? They're going to start just going over here and they're going to get too far away, all right? They're going to put everything in the middle of the shot and take that picture. Okay? But let's see what we can do with the rule of thirds to take some more interesting pictures than that. First off, don't be afraid to get close to your subject, okay? Either through a zoom, all right, or by physically getting closer to your subject, all right? Okay. Now here we are, that's the same snapshot sort of thing, just getting closer to the subject with everything in the center of the shot. It's very hard after you've started practicing using the rule of thirds. You start to do things that way automatically, so it's very hard for me to put things in the middle, okay? But let's see what we can do to be more interesting now, okay? Now we have said that people want to focus their eyes. Now I'm using a trick here called half shutter to focus on his eyeball, but I want to move, oh, here, I'm going to do this. I used an advanced trick, and we'll talk about it later. Okay, but I don't want his eyeball in the middle of the shot. I want his eyeball over here. I may have turned off the grid. Interesting. But I want his eyeball over here. So I'm closer, and I have moved Mr. Rabbit onto the thirds intersection right up here. Okay. Now let's say instead my subject is not Mr. Rabbit. My subject is this coffee cup. Okay. Now instead of Mr. Rabbit being on the thirds line, I'm going to move Mr. Coffee Cup up to the thirds line. Right? And we're going to look at that picture in a second. Okay? And then finally, we're going to do a shot where we're using zones. Okay? So we've got the stuff on the table. Let me expose for that. We've got the stuff on the table taking up about 2/3 of the shot. All right. So let's look at those pictures and see what they tell us. Okay, we'll go back. That is a video. Okay. So this is one with Mr. Rabbit's eyeball in the center. Okay. It's okay, but it's not great. Okay. This is the snapshot that most people would take. Okay. They fit everything in. Everything's there. Life is good. Okay. But it's not very interesting. Okay. It's like, what's the subject? Is it the rabbit? Is it the coffee cup? What is the subject there? Okay. Here, we've very clearly established that Mr. Rabbit is the subject because his eyeball is now up on that third intersection of the right and top intersection. Okay. Then just by changing our composition a little bit, we're de-emphasizing Mr. Rabbit even though he's in the foreground, and the coffee cup takes on importance, being in the background. All right. There, I've got the coffee cup right on the intersection. So even though we have this very colorful foreground, okay, we have this huge rabbit, it is very clear that that coffee cup is the subject of this picture. Okay? And here we've got rabbit and coffee cup taking up the bottom 2/3 of the picture. And the sky and the fence taking up the top 1/3. Again, making them kind of equally important, but more important than the background and the sky. Okay? That's the first picture I ever took with this camera. All right. So hopefully you can get a little bit of an idea of how that all works with the rule of thirds. Let's look at it some more. Okay? Here, I'm just looking, I've got my light pole. Okay? If I put him smack dab in the center, get things kind of straight, not very interesting. If I move him off to this side, notice how, I haven't even taken the shot yet. Notice how he just jumps to the foreground in your brain. Here, when I look, the thing I see is that post back there. Why? Because he's closer to the third line. If I want this light pole to be the important part, I'm going to move him onto my third line, take the picture that way. Okay? What if I want that tent in the back, okay, to be important? Well, I'm going to move him onto the third line. Watch. Watch how your eyes focus. Okay? Click. Just like that. The tent is now our focus. All right? Let's do the same thing horizontally. Okay? Here, I'm shooting up. I want to see the trees against the sky. That's my subject. Okay? Trying to do things backwards here. Get things straight. But if I change everything so that the foreground now takes up 2/3 of the picture. Okay. Now, without doing that, subject to that picture is the fence. Now, pretty much the same composition, but I just moved my tripod onto a third line. And all of a sudden, the fence doesn't matter anymore. That tripod that was just as here. Yeah. Just as much in the picture here, where the fence is the subject, all of a sudden the tripod becomes the subject just by moving where it is on the third line. I didn't get any closer to it. It's the same size. It just became more important because it is on that place where our brain looks for things. All right? So, what is the moral of the story? All right? We took some pictures there with the A6000. It is my weapon of choice. I'm using my 16 to 55 millimeter. For those of you who are in the numbers, this is a Sony A6000 using a 16 to 55 millimeter kit lens. Okay. I am on aperture priority. I have my aperture set to f11 so that I have a fairly broad depth of field, and it's a pretty bright day. Shooting in the shadows here, I'm shooting at 1/60th of a second. Okay, so those are the numbers, okay? And you can see them on all of the pictures that I took. Okay. And you see the ISO changing as we change our focus, just as we've talked about before. But I do use aperture priority. Somewhere here it says that. I guess when I first turn it on, it says A for aperture. All right. So, what do you see here? You see the pop-up tent. What do you see here? You see the light pole. What do you see here? You see the post. Okay. All of those things are in all three pictures. Okay. And again, our whole series featuring Mr. Bunny. Okay. Don't be afraid to get close to your subject. Make your subject the subject of your picture. All right. So we're almost at the end of our hour. I want to thank you all for watching and coming. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Janine. And Janine's on her way out. Terry has already left. And those of you who are watching the replay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It really means a lot that you follow me and enjoy my work. I mean, I enjoy myself, but I always enjoy myself. That's just what I do. But thank you all for taking a look. To recap, we covered our 5 pictures. Once again, they were dew on the grass, all bark and no bite, give in to the glow, waiting in the wings, Aztec Dancer 1, and close encounters of a dragon kind. And then we talked about the rule of thirds, putting things at the intersection of the thirds lines, putting things in the zones of the thirds, okay? Filling the zone, not just putting a blip in the middle of a zone. If you've got a blip, a single subject, you want to go with this rule of putting it on the crosshairs. If you have zones of interesting things, you want to use those to fill up the fields, okay? So that's the rule of thirds, okay? Just like here, the subject is this bee, so the bee's eye is falling right straight on the thirds intersection, all right? Okay. Here, eye on the thirds, okay? Here, vertically, she falls on that thirds line, just like I was showing you as I sit in the camera. Here, filling the zone, okay? Now, I don't own rights to any of those pictures, okay? Those are all from digital photography, I believe it's called digital photography training. Let's see if it will tell me if I hover here. It doesn't. Digital photography school, there it is, has a lesson on rule of thirds. I'll post that in the show notes so that you can go there and look at their lesson and give them your email. None of these people are sponsored, and I don't have rights to any of this. I'm just using this as an example, and I do hope that you go there and support these people. So, and then we looked at images on our Sony a6000 featuring Mr. Bunny, Mr. Coffee Cup, some posts, and a fence. That's what happens when you're stuck at home. You know, you only have so many subjects, but we managed to make do. Okay. And then finally, Mr. Tripod. So that's what I promised you for today. Remember that it is Memorial Day weekend. Please, at 3 o'clock tomorrow, wherever your local time is, take a minute and remember those who have fallen in wars defending our country. That is what Memorial Day is about. Observe a moment of silence at 3 p.m. But you can also observe my sale, which is going on through midnight on Monday. So you have plenty of time, even taking your moment of silence, to go to ronalcottphotography.com, and there you will see up in the announcement bar that if you use the code MEMORIAL, you can get 20% off anything from the whole store. Okay? So that's going on until Monday. Until the end of June, because we're starting to get out of lockdown now here in California, $20 out of every $100 that is spent on my site will be donated to directrelief.org, which is a charitable organization that provides medical supplies and equipment, both in the U.S. and around the world, to help fight medical disasters, such as our current COVID-19 pandemic. So help me support them. What else? Friday nights, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, I get a little more dressed up and have a Friday happy hour virtual art gallery show. I show 3 or so of my actual limited edition prints that I have in stock. I offer special pricing on my limited editions at that time. I give you a special discount just for the day on Friday. And I also have a giveaway. So as long as I get 2 people or more show up live, during my live giveaway, I will give away one of my prints on metallic photo paper. So that's all happening Fridays at 5:30 Pacific. That's 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Grab your favorite adult beverage. Set up nice on your living room couch with somebody that you like and enjoy some art. What the heck? Where else are you going to go? So I hope you have enjoyed this. I know I enjoy doing it. I was privileged to have some people join me live today. I'm privileged that you're watching the replay if that's what you're doing. If you're not doing, then you need to worry. Because if you can hear me and you're not watching the replay, there are voices in your head. Be very, very careful. And I just met my 1 hour limit on Instagram. So we're going to go ahead and end there. Thank you all for watching. And I'll see you all here next Sunday morning, where we'll do the same thing again, except it will be a different photography tip. Thank you. Have a great Sunday. Have a great Memorial Day. And be careful out there. Be good to yourself. Be kind to others. And become the person that you would like to meet.